This is DW News Africa. Coming up on the program, the food crisis causing millions to starve in Sudan. Soup kitchens like this one have been a lifeline for people displaced by the war, but many are being forced to close because of aid budget cuts by the US government. Also on the program, Congo's conflict crop. Islamist militants are terrorizing cocoa farmers in the country, stealing the cocoa to fund their activities. Plus, we meet the Gambian musician who's broken barriers of success playing the Kora, an instrument traditionally played by men. Hello, I'm Christine Mundwa. It's good to have your company. We begin our program in Sudan, where the ongoing civil war has left millions displaced and tens of thousands dead. Half of the population, that's about 25 million people, now face severe hunger in what the UN calls the world's largest food and humanitarian crisis. We'll hear shortly from the World Food Programme's Assistant Director on this situation. But first, this report on Sudan's community kitchens that have become lifelines for survival. They are run by volunteers, but since the US cut aid funding in January, more than half of these kitchens have been forced to close.
It's exactly 3 p.m. and with bowls in their hands, people pour into this neighborhood in Omdurman. Their kitchen, run by local religious leaders, starts serving free meals to anyone in need. Kamal Bashir never misses a day.
If you didn't have this place, what would happen?
I'd just be angry, just be hungry all the time.
This kitchen serves thousands of meals every day. Most of the people that come here have been displaced. Like this woman, she had to flee her home because of the war.
Where I was, there was nothing at all. It was only when I arrived here that I found this kitchen. There was no longer a market, and then we have no money, no one works.
The system of community kitchens has developed throughout the country, allowing hundreds of thousands of people to survive. It is the volunteers who are in charge of getting groceries, sometimes at the risk of their own lives. Since the beginning of the war, 2 of them have been killed while out looking for food. This soup kitchen is entirely financed by a religious leader, Sheikh El Amin.
If this war were to last another 10 years, we would continue to do the same thing.
But many other kitchens rely directly on international aid. The UN says 60% of them shut down after President Trump suddenly cut US funding last January, and now the impact is being felt.
There used to be 2 pans, one here and the other there.
This community kitchen used to serve 200 meals a day.
Since American aid was cut back, there just isn't enough to keep everything running, so they've had to shut down some of the community kitchens.
Sudan is the only country in the world with a famine. 13 million people displaced, and half of them are children. This is Khartoum al-Buluk Hospital, the only one with a pediatric unit.
It's a ward for malnourished children.
Dr. Ahmad Kolari shows around. Here in this room are the most critical cases. The children here are between life and death. This boy is suffering from severe acute malnutrition. This is the case of little Amin, who arrived 2 weeks ago.
How is Amin? What is his vital data?
It's okay. He's recovering little by little.
Does he manage to take milk? He really was in a very critical condition. He's a little better. Sometimes the children have to stay here for 2 months.
These children are extremely vulnerable. There are only 3 beds for the most serious cases. The children next door are less malnourished, but still in need of medical attention. The department is stretched beyond capacity, at times receiving over 150 patients in a single day.
Sometimes we have up to 5 patients per bed. We have no capacity. Before, there was only room for malnutrition, that's all. Now we have a whole ward. In fact, we would have to build an extension in the hospital.
Leaving little hope for these victims as the war in Sudan rages on.
I'm now joined by Rania Dagash Kamara. She is the Assistant Executive Director for Partnerships and Resource Mobilization at the World Food Programme. Ms. Dagash Kamara is currently in Berlin meeting with officials and members of the German Parliament. Welcome to DW News Africa, Mr. Dagash Kamara. We'll talk about your meetings here in Germany, but I want to begin by asking you about what is the world's largest humanitarian crisis, which is currently unfolding in Sudan. Nearly 13 million people are displaced inside the country. What are aid workers experiencing on the ground as they work to deliver aid to civilians in Sudan?
Thank you for making the time to see us, and thank you for asking the question. Sudan is today the largest crisis in the world that we have, and it's 25 million people who go hungry. We have teams across the country, and that goes for many humanitarian partners, WFP and many others. And we experience incredible challenges to be able to reach those across Sudan. Sudan is the only country in the world today that actually has a confirmed famine. And 2 nights ago, a convoy of ours and UNICEF's that was just outside Al-Fashir in Darfur was trying to get in for the first time in a year. It was struck by an airstrike, and 5 of our colleagues died in that process. So it's a bit challenging in terms of our staff safety. It's challenging in terms of access and administrative constraints. It's challenging in terms of our ability to reach those who need our assistance so desperately. But we are there, and we continue, and we have continued despite this very difficult situation 2 days ago.
You mentioned that aid convoy that came under attack in Darfur. We also learn or are hearing that Port Sudan, which is a main route for aid into the country, is under attack. Just give us a sense of how this is really affecting your operations, trying to get aid in. Are you using alternative routes?
We actually use a lot of entry points for Sudan, and we use Port Sudan for the bulk of what comes in. We use the Chad route increasingly to bring aid into the Darfurs and the Kordofans. We also use the route through Egypt, and at times we are able to use the route from South Sudan. So we really use all possible corridors to try and reach the most desperate and hungry population in Sudan at the moment. But 2024 has been the deadliest year for many of the humanitarians. We lost 340 people across the world. That is the reality of where we serve, and we continue to be in every front line possible.
Mr. Dagash Kamara, the global report on food crises warns of a massive drop. We're talking something to the tune of 45% in funding for food aid this year. And that's mostly because of the Trump administration's cuts to the US's foreign aid. Are you already feeling the impact of this as the World Food Programme?
You know, all of the donors that support the World Food Programme are generous with us, and the US especially has had generations of support to feed and save lives across the world. Germany is a massive leader in this space, and many of our other partners. Collectively, we are seeing a significant drop in humanitarian assistance, but for WFP specifically, it's a 40% drop from all of our major donors. This means that we are unable to reach people in many crisis locations. It means we have to cut our rations. It means we have to cut people in our targeting of who gets food and who doesn't. Do we take food from the hungry to feed the starving? Very difficult positions that we make in every crisis context. And we just have to be in less locations because there is a lot less resources.
As I mentioned earlier, you are in Berlin. You have been meeting with officials here. You noted that Germany has been a significant donor country, but even here, the aid budget is being cut. Should Germany and others be stepping up at this moment rather than pulling back on aid?
You know, we say a hungry person has three choices in life. They can revolt, and that creates more instability in the world. They can move to try and find alternatives to their livelihood, and that includes migration or displacement, or they can starve and die. And in addressing the third one, in Germany continuing to be the principled leader in supporting food security, you stave off and make Germany safer. Food security is national security. A mother and her children who are safe in the Sahel or East Africa or the Middle East and are fed are definitely making Germany more safe and secure, because you reduce the amount of political turmoil in other countries by supporting food security, and you reduce migration or attempted migration because more opportunities stay in the countries where aid and assistance is provided. So we were very delighted when we saw the commitment from the coalition agreement that Germany would stay and support humanitarian aid and would continue to support foreign aid. And we do hope that they be and continue to be the principled leader that they are.
Rania Dagash Kamara from the World Food Programme, we appreciate your time here on DW. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is known for its vast mineral reserves, but it's also a major cocoa producer, ranked 12th globally in 2023, according to UN stats. But just like Congo's minerals, the country's cocoa has also been a source of conflict. Armed militants, specifically from a group known as the Allied Democratic Forces, or ADF, target farmers and steal their crop. In a moment, I'll be talking to an expert analyst about how the ADF uses Congo's cocoa to fund its insurgency. But first, this report from our correspondent Jonas Gerding. He has been in Beni, where a joint military operation by Congolese and Ugandan troops recently pushed ADF militants out of a cocoa-rich area. He's been speaking to locals there.
Dark chocolate from the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's a sweet treat that supports local livelihoods. Neema Avanjisivavi is a manager at Virunga Origins, the DRC's first modern chocolate factory.
We profit from our African resources and from what we grow. We add value to our crops by transforming them into finished products. All the profits stay in Africa, and we reap the full benefits.
The chocolate factory is located next to the dense Congolese rainforest at the foot of the Rwenzori Mountains and on the border to Uganda. Farmers cultivate cocoa, the basis for chocolate, on this fertile land. But armed conflict in the region has made farming dangerous. Avanjisivavi is involved in all stages of chocolate production and helps sort the cocoa beans. She's witnessed the instability caused by the insurgents firsthand. When she started working here 3 years ago, a local Islamist militia set up base in the woods and terrorized nearby villages.
It was horrific. Some villages were completely abandoned. More than half of the population were massacred. And the rest fled to neighboring towns.
Cocoa is a blessing and a curse. The armed groups steal and sell the crop to fund their activities, killing farmers and forcing others to work for them. Germaine Mohissa was forced to abandon her plantation because she was afraid of being killed.
Going to the field was really complicated, almost impossible. If you heard a noise, you'd be afraid it might be a rebel and run away. It was really unsafe, so we were barely making a living.
Germaine Mohissa is happy she can farm cocoa again. Security has improved here since the Congolese and Ugandan armies joined forces to push back the militias.
Cocoa brings so many benefits. I'm happy to be able to provide food and school fees for my children. All this is thanks to cocoa. If my mother needs clothes, I'll buy them for her. And if she falls ill, I'll pay for her treatment.
This is one of the few areas in eastern DRC where the army has managed to regain control from insurgents. Vico Kombi is the manager at the Farmers Cooperative. He says the improved security means more than just prosperity for the farmers.
If we spread businesses like this throughout the area, young people will have jobs. Therefore, they will not join armed groups. But there are so many of them that don't have jobs.
Avante Sivavi has learned to run the factory, which is now exporting to Europe and East African countries. But she wants to know even more about the secrets of developing chocolate.
I am passionate about chocolate, and I'm committed to going very far in this profession. My vision is to become a world-renowned chocolatier, like the mentor who trained me.
Neema, Avante Sivavi and other people in Mutwanga hope the peace holds, so they can continue to cultivate cocoa and produce the chocolate that holds the key to their future.
I'm now joined by Bukeni Waruzi, Executive Director of Free the Slaves. That's a policy and advocacy organization based in Washington, D.C. Free the Slaves has released a report putting a spotlight on how armed groups and some military actors in the DRC are violently seizing cocoa farms and forcing farmers, this includes children, to work in slave conditions. Welcome to DW News Africa, Bukeni. We just heard in our report that armed groups continue to steal cocoa from farmers, selling it to fund their activities. Can you tell us more from the reporting that you have done on this? What is the scale of the problem?
We know that cocoa prices are high on the market. The European Union has come up with the forced labor regulations, try to make sure, cocoa, chocolate that is of other products that are consumed in Europe are not made of forced labor and child labor and other human rights abuses. However, what we find from our reports that we did on the ground is that in the region of Beni, Bunia, Ituri, the cocoa farmers are facing kidnapping, forced labor. Children are being forced to transport cocoa, and that cocoa is smuggled through the borders of Congo and Uganda.
Yeah, I actually want to come in there because my next question to you is, what should be done and by who to get rid of the buyer's market for this cocoa that is being violently stolen by armed groups?
Yes, it is very important that but the issue of smuggling of cocoa be part of the agenda of the cooperation between Uganda and the DRC. While in Uganda part, the Uganda government has the duty, has the obligation to make sure they clean the supply chains. And on the other side, the DRC government should really reinforce its security system to make sure that these abuses on the farms are stopped, and also bring the responsible to book. Now, this will require a mechanism, and a mechanism that has to really bring together a few parties. The companies that are buying cocoa have to invest in the due diligence, especially now that they know, or they're supposed to know. The government of the DRC have to take this issue seriously, and also on the other side of the border, the Ugandan government has to put a mechanism not only to stop the war, but also to make sure it can really track these rebel groups and make sure also they control their borders.
Bukeni, for people around the world who love their chocolate in whatever form that they get it, how can they know that the chocolate that they're buying isn't funding violence and forced labor?
That's a very good question, Christine. Thank you. So by buying this kind of cocoa, this kind of chocolate, even the consumers may, are kind of contributing to the ongoing war that is fueled by the money that's being poured in these kind of big businesses. Now, I think there is need for transparency, and the consumers have the right to know where is this chocolate, what makes this chocolate, where is coming from. In this case, I think it is very important for the consumer to demand, all these companies that are selling these goods on the market, to make sure, they clean their supply chains and they are being transparent about it. Second, they have to make sure the new EU regulations are fully implemented by these companies and wherever they source their product, to make sure that, the consumers are not consuming goods that are made of forced labor, especially goods also that are contributing to the war that is slaughtering women, men, and children in the poor areas such as the Eastern Democratic of Congo.
All right, Bukeni Waruzi, Executive Director of Free the Slaves. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now to a musical journey. Gambian musician Sona Jobate is taking her craft, playing the Kora, to the world. The West African string instrument is usually restricted to male players, but Jobate is defying the norms. She's currently on tour in Europe, and DW's Syed Saad Abubakar went to see her perform here in Berlin.
West Africa tunes on stage in Berlin. Driven by the Kora, an instrument with a long history. And Sona Jobate has made it her own.
We are representing, as an individual, something far greater than any one of us. This is a tradition that is centuries old. So we are just right now the current people who are pursuing this and who are advocating for it, but there have been many, many generations before us.
She was born in a family of musicians from the Gambia. The Kora is handed usually down from a father to son. But Sona's father and a brother taught her the art. And what she's built goes beyond just music.
Music for me represents the culture, and I wanted to bring about a feeling of mutual respect between cultures. And so when we speak about representing your culture and yet conforming to a language that doesn't belong to your culture, and that's being seen as normal, I wanted to push back against that and say that, in fact, for us really to be able to experience each other, to also cultivate a sense of mutual respect, it should work both ways. So audiences from around the world singing in African languages should not seem so strange.
During this stop on her European tour, Sona is performing in one of Berlin's classical music venues. Right here in one of Berlin's most prestigious concert hall, Philharmonie, Sona Jobate is performing her music to about 1,200 audience tonight. Once a dream, she's taking African music and culture beyond the continent.
In 2015, the same year I wrote this song, was the very year I opened my own academy.
And there in the Gambia, she aims to host up to 300 students, promoting a system of learning that celebrates local heritage. She hopes it will be a model for education reform across Africa.
An initiative that I am very much focused on and dedicated to in my life, which is to achieve reformation of our curriculums in Africa, and I'm starting in the Gambia. But this is a system that I would like to see implemented in other countries, not just the Gambia. And that for me is an essential part of what I do. It's a critical part of social development and social change and progress for African nations to really understand the legacy of oppression that is still contained within our education systems.
And her audience here in Germany is captivated.
So Colombia is very, very far from Germany. We have to go through a lot of countries to get there. Many people will never travel to Africa. And so for me, this music has this incredible power to be able to transport people without having to physically leave the location they're in, to feel an understanding, empathy, relationship, and connection to a culture very different to their own. And so for me, this is the beautiful, magical part of music that we as artists, I think, have a very unique role to play within that space.
From Gambia to the world, Sona Jobati hopes she can spark change in how people listen to music.
And that's it for now. But today, we'll leave you with some more of Sona Jobate on the Kora. Bye for now.